This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com. And we are, man, just right behind the Starrcade event. And that Starrcade event, what a show it was. I think a lot of folks left that show thinking that maybe the Road Warriors were the tag champs, and now you and Tully can't wait to get on TV and show ass a little bit about, hey, we still got the belts. In hindsight, I think a lot of folks probably felt like Starrcade 87 was maybe the beginning of the end. Did you feel that way? That Starrcade 87 is maybe when the tide started to turn a little bit for you guys?
I knew that if we walked out of there, whether or not we had a helicopter come through the ceiling or we had the National Guard show up or whatever the ridiculous scenario, if we walked out of there tag champions, we were going to have a stronger company the next day.
Yeah.
Because nobody, and I'm talking nobody, gave us one chance.
Yeah.
Road Warriors, their hometown.
Yeah.
They were peaking as far as being big stars. We were red hot. Chicago, what a market, was really building into something special for the wrestling industry. And it was just, all the stars were coming into alignment. I knew it was going to be a big deal.
So now with Starrcade, easy for me to say, just very recently in the rear view, when do you guys start hearing, hey man, McMahon screwed us around? Just to add context here, 1987 is such a landmark year for professional wrestling. WrestleMania 3 effectively changed a lot of things. It caused Jim Crockett to hit the panic button and finish his purchase of Bill Watts UWF. And Lord knows we've talked about that a little bit recently. But at the same time, he's now saying, I've got to find a way to placate my guys. And a lot of the guys in the business are looking around saying, hey, I want one of those WrestleMania paydays. Hey, I want one of those LJN dolls. You're hearing all these rumors about guys getting big paydays for these type of opportunities. And that's just really not readily available with JCP. So he says, hey, hang with me. We won't have one big show as big as WrestleMania maybe, but through a collection of shows that we'll call pay-per-view extravaganzas, you'll make more staying with us. And the first opportunity for that big vision was Starrcade. And of course, we know Vince McMahon sabotaged it. But how much did you know as a talent who's making towns? Because that's recall, right? That's hindsight. But as a guy who's living it, who's packing his bag and hitting the road every single day, did you know a few days after Starrcade, a week later, a month later? When did you know, damn it, McMahon screwed us?
I guess I was just so far removed from the day-to-day bean counter end of the business.
Mm-hmm.
I just knew business was good.
Yes.
And when you were a wrestler in those days, if you were smart, you kind of kept up with, okay, let me eyeball this.
Yeah.
I know what that house is. That's just going to be a good payday for you, because every single night you didn't have an event coordinator coming back telling you what the house was.
Right.
It just wasn't that way. You'd ask them, how's the house? And they'd say, good. That's it. Mm-hmm. Or not so good, or average, or it's down, or it's up. But, we just knew that we were, now Tully and I were being used better than we ever were, probably with that company. I would think stealing a win from the Road Warriors and heading forward, we had nothing but positive aspirations. And we knew we were going to be positioned well. We knew we had something special in that team. And it wasn't a situation where we're sitting there just harping on, hey, Vince clipped our legs out from under us with his dealings. We left that to the office, or at least I did, because it was such a foreign language to me.
And really, that's really the story for a lot of folks. I mean, it's hard for us to imagine now, because Lord knows we can all just pick up our remote and just bam, okay, I got a pay-per-view coming. In reality, back then, and it was a totally different animal. First of all, not everybody had access to pay-per-view. There were only certain areas of the country that could even do this sort of thing. And then when they could, man, you had to get down to your cable provider before the close of business on Friday to get a little gimmick to screw into the back of your TV on Sunday. So it's a totally different thing here. But Vince McMahon straight up sabotaged Starrcade and made a lot of those cable systems decide, do I want WrestleMania or do I want to roll the dice with these new guys? Because Vince created Survivor Series directly to compete, but you as one of the boys, I mean, you're just doing what you always do. Well, looks like we're sold out. Looks like a lot of folks in here probably expecting a pretty good payday. But I think it's that event where you started to have some hurt feelings based on the payoff, right?
Well, you started hearing about that, and it did make you think, because, you know, Vince was in his courting stage. He wasn't, you know, he wasn't this, or didn't come across as this power hungry mongrel that was just really, you know, more than willing and able to steamroll the rest of the business. He was courting talent. He was sending messages out all the time. By this point in time, I'd already had a couple of messages from Barry Darsow, so general that, you know, we were just friends. We were talking on the phone, and he was doing well, Demolition, making money, kicking ass. He was, boy, Vince sure does like you guys. And that's all he would say. He would say something like that, you know, and it would just be, I would either respond to it or I wouldn't. We would just move on with our conversation. But he was smart. He was throwing those little feelers out, I'm sure, to every top talent in every territory around the world. And he was assembling this all-star team.
Do you think that, boy, I don't really mean to position Vince as like the puppeteer here, but do you think he actively went to Darsow and said, hey, just feel them out, see what they say? Or do you think Barry is like, man, I sure would like to work with those guys?
Could have been half and half. It could have been, he could have, you know, sent that to Jack Lanza, who turned around and just mentioned it, you know, your buddy Arn and Tully are doing good down there, huh? They happy? Could have been something that simple coming from Jack. I don't really know the exact avenue. I'm sure it wasn't Vince just calling Barry going, hey, you know, see if you can get Blanchard and Anderson up here. I'm sure that wasn't the case, but it was just enough to make you think. But I also was smart enough to know, and I can't emphasize this enough, during this particular time when we had those private planes, and you're looking at the schedule, which we run through here on this podcast every week, and you start visualizing the country and what it took to get from A to B to C to F to G, you know, it was, those private planes were worth their weight in platinum. Because I was smart enough to also hear, man, these guys are making killer money, but you know what? They're so dead, they don't care because they've been out 56 days. And you would start to hear those stories, and, you know, and then I'd look at my check and go, okay, I'm on a private plane. I'm not dealing with airports. I'm going to be home X number of days, at least at night. And I got a pretty good gig here because we were making money, and it was a good gig. It wasn't what top guys for Vince were making, but I've never worried about what anybody else made in this business, Conrad. That's what sustained me. That's how I've been able to survive all these years. I never made top money, but I made a pretty good living for a long time. And that's how you rationalize it. And it doesn't matter what anybody else makes, as long as I'm having a pretty nice lifestyle and I'm taking care of myself and my family. That was good enough.
So talk to me about timeline. You know, you and I talked about this, Lord, way back at the beginning of our podcast venture together, but there becomes a moment where you're pretty disappointed in the payoff here that you get for Starrcade. I mean, that wouldn't have been something you would have gotten in December. Would it have been?
I don't even remember what that payoff was.
I just remember it was half. I think you were expecting it to be 25 and it was 12.5 or some such, and it was still a great payday. But the reality was you were like, well, he told me it would be this. So I often say in business and just in life in general, the key to life is managing expectations. And if you had an expectation based on a conversation you had with Mr. Crockett, we're talking about Jim, not David, and he says, hey, I understand, but we're going to take care of you on this one. It's going to be 25 grand. And then you get it and it's half. Well, without the context of everything that Vince did, I could see why you and Tully were upset. So we've talked about that before. I don't mean to beat a dead horse about it, but I'm just trying to understand as we're talking about December of 87 here today, would it have happened in December, do you think, or would it have happened at a later time?
I'm not even sure, but he did, it. And here's how blurred I am at this point of getting dropped on my head in my career. I wasn't sure this was the payoff that was in question. Correct. It wasn't this was our first quote pay-per-view with Jim Crockett.
Yeah. And your last match is going to take place September 10th.
So that being said, Jimmy did come up and he pulled me in the bathroom, and that's usually reserved for when two guys are fixing to get in a fist fight. But he just said, hey, Arn, you've been doing a great job. I really appreciate all the hard work. I'm going to pay you this for the pay-per-view. This was way before there were any numbers in or any houses or any tickets sold or any finishes went down or any of that stuff. It was just, so that's what I hung my hat on. And again, that reinforced, I could care less about what they're making up north. That's going to be good. But when they volunteer that, and then they come to you with, and it was less than half, it was 11.7.
Okay.
Shows you how shitty my math is. But, and I go, well, that's not what I was told. And he goes, listen, business is bad. You guys have been great. He says, all I'm asking is hang in here with me and I will make that up to you. Checks in the mail. Paint's drying. It'll be drying a little bit later, come back later, whatever the excuse is. It's not good enough. When you volunteered it, my mind at that point, I suddenly went from team player to hey, when you get my expectations up, and I actually went home and told, I'm pretty sure I told Aaron about this in advance, which I would have normally never done until I had it in my hand, but it was biggest thing that ever happened to me in the business.
So you were excited, shared that with your wife. So now you got a little egg on your face too. Yeah.
And if I did, boy, did I look stupid. And boy, would she have gotten mad, because she's always been very protective of me. Even when most of the time I can protect myself. Sometimes she's and I go, okay, this is where I should say no. And she'll go, listen, just let it go. Don't worry about it. We'll be fine. She calms me down. And then there's times where she goes, no, F that. They're treating you wrong. Stand up for yourself. It's bullshit. Well, the only reason I wasn't standing up for myself in some of these situations is I was protecting them, because once I kind of get rolling with the anger, it's a little difficult to reel it in. So I try not to ever get there.
Just to add context to what you're saying I'm trying to take care of them. You mean your family. The idea being, I don't want to be a hothead and make myself feel better, but really I'm the breadwinner here. I'm the provider. So if I do that, I'm doing more than just hurting my career. I'm hurting their lifestyle. And so I'm going to just keep that to myself and try to keep my anger in check. Right.
100%. I wish I could have said it that well. You just, let your ego go. It's still more money than I probably deserve.
Right.
And will ever make in any other line of work, no matter where I am. It's for also, that's for 30 minutes work. That's the way you got to look at it.
That's right.
So anyway, it was around this time that you started some of those conversations, man. They're on fire up north, and there was just a little bit of a different tempo when all the guys were getting their Starrcade checks, and I'm sure a lot of them were not nearly as good as mine. I think that we would have probably got those just 90 days out.
Yeah, that's the thing. So you and the guys, the roster, y'all didn't have any inclination that this is going to be disappointing until well into the new year. You wouldn't have known the next month.
Could have been, I want to say it was 90 days.
Yeah.
And we understand that they said they had to collect,
Yes.
you know, the cable companies had to collect their revenue, sort it out, and then you would get paid off of it. And I believe that was correct with Vince and everybody across the board. That was more of a cable thing than it was a Crockett or a McMahon thing.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at savewithconrad.com.